fire station. Yeah. Used to come see you. You had the trailers with the pull-up trailers.
Yeah.
Yep. Separating everything. What are plastic over there? What can go where?
That was pretty slick. We got it. It was a good operation. Okay, we're being recorded now.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. In the absence of a chairperson, if somebody would like to call the meeting to order.
Is this meeting now starting? Call the meeting to order. The time is 1:03 p.m. First Fraser DDA meeting.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today. This is our first meeting of the Downtown Development Authority Board. We are calling this a special meeting until we have established a regular meeting time.
Are you on?
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, is that better? Yeah. And again, in the absence of a chairperson, we will elect officers. We'll talk more about that once we have adopted bylaws that establish how we elect officers. So if we could have somebody approve the agenda or make a motion to approve the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Anyone could second it.
I second that.
Any opposed?
All right. And then the first order that we have is the oath of office. So we can swear in the DDA board members. Caitlin.
Need one more. Oh. Just a little bit, just a little open. Yeah, one of those. Sarah, can we do a roll call so I make sure I know who's here?
Yes.
Yep, Angela Nichols. Tiffany Gatesman.
Barry Young.
Katie Souls.
Abby Samuelson.
Parks Thompson.
Bill Palmer.
Lori Hannon.
Nick Crab.
Greg Beckler.
And anybody online?
Greg Beckler.
Great, thank you. That's Oh, and Bill Schrum from DCI is doer.
Nice.
Good question. Steve said he'd be joining us around 1:15, 1:30. He had a previous conflict, so once that ends, he's gonna jump online. Yeah, and then that'll be all 11. Okay. So Caitlin, we'll swear you all in. I'll stand. Either you can use your right hand and hold it up or place it over your heart, whatever you prefer. I'll state it and then you can repeat and then just fill in your name. And yeah. I
Katie
Barry.
Souls.
Nichols.
do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
And of the state of Colorado.
and of the state of Colorado.
The Fraser Town Code and faithfully perform the duties of the Fraser Downtown Development Authority Board, DDA, upon which I'm about to enter.
The Fraser Town Code and faithfully perform the duties of the Fraser Downtown Development Authority Board. DDA, upon which I am about to enter.
The final one you can give me at the end.
My name's spelled wrong, is that okay?
I blame one.
Should I correct that?
Yeah, you can correct it and we'll make sure we get it right on the.
Well, welcome, everybody. This is a pretty exciting day. This has been for us, a very long time coming. Discussion for over a year. My sense of timeline is not with me anymore. But welcome. Most of you know me. I'm Michael Brack. I'm the town manager here. This has been a big initiative for a long time from our board of trustees, and it's exciting. We obviously went through a process of getting this approved by the voters. Went through a process for having you appointed. Went through a process for having this thing being created, and also being able to leverage debt as it makes sense. And yeah, it's an exciting day. Thank you guys for all for being here. Something I just want to kind of speak to a little bit is, we're really excited to get this going. We're really excited for you guys to really step up and be interested in really providing for our downtown areas. It's great to hear all your different perspectives and ideas and projects and events and different things that we could do in our downtown. We're really at a major pivotal moment right now in our downtown area. And there's a lot of excitement behind it. There's a lot of momentum, I think, behind it. And this is a big part of that momentum. So I just want to commend you guys all for stepping up and really wanting to do this work that you don't really know what it is yet. But it's great for you to bring your priorities, your goals here, and look how we can really drive this thing forward. Some of the big benefits that we're seeing for this whole downtown initiative is we obviously have a lot of work going on for the town's first housing project on the north end of town. Building a vibrant downtown area has been identified as a priority for quite a while. I'm sure Katie can speak to my time before my time here, but at a really good pivotal moment, there's a lot of interest and development in our downtown areas. Greg Beckler is a big part of that with his company there. And it's just an exciting time. And with this being positioned really well financially for the tax increment that we're looking at being able to collect from a lot of the new development coming in downtown, and providing a good funding source for these types of downtown projects is huge. And I just want you to know, just from me personally, and I would say from the board of trustees as well, there's a lot of excitement behind this. And again, just want to make sure that you know that I'm available to you guys. I have to duck out here for a meeting in about an hour, but I'll obviously engage until then. But just want you to know that I'm available. If you guys you're not familiar with this building, my office is right in this corner right here. Feel free to stop by anytime. I know you'll be doing a lot of work with Sarah. Sarah has been probably one of the most important members of this whole initiative. She's really built up her knowledge base. It's a big first working initiative when she was hired on to do this work. And she has really learned the ins and outs of this thing pretty substantially. And working a lot with our consultants, with DCI, it's been a really big part of that. Teeing this up for everything that we need for approvals to make sure that we're meeting state law for how this can be formed and created, and then actually operating is a big part of her role here at the town. In addition to just seeing the success of our downtown areas. So just want you to know that I'm available, I'm accessible. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call or email. But a lot of excitement with this. We obviously have this housing project that we just talked about, having this vibrant downtown areas. We're going to have them right next to each other. You can have people who don't need vehicles to be able to live in our housing project here and be able to walk to these downtown areas. If you've been here more than a minute and you've walked the downtown areas, it takes some vision. And I always encourage our board regularly and our staff, and I would encourage you, walk down there, walk the River Trail, walk Clayton Court, walk around all of these different areas of our downtown, and just get familiar with it. And it's going to make the discussions that we'll have as far as project priorities, a plan of development, and then an actual work plan that we'll be updating every year with you guys, or that you guys will be updating, to really help drive forward these initiatives and priorities that make the most sense. So I think it's great. I think this is a great initiative, and again, let me know if you guys have anything for me, and really happy to meet all you guys and start to work with you guys on this work.
Great. Before we continue with the agenda, I think it'd be great if we could go around and just do introductions. I know a lot of you were present at the board meeting and briefly introduce yourself, but maybe if you could just tell us who you are and your relationship to this community, and kind of what you're excited about with the DDA, and then we can jump into more of the nuts and bolts.
I guess I'll start. My name is Nick Crabb. I'm the owner of Camera Brewing in town. I've been living up here for almost 7 years now, and I've always been really in tune with like trying to make Fraser much more of a focal point than a passerby town. Yeah.
I'm Lori Hannon. I'm a resident in the DDA district. I have been in the county for 7 years. I'm a project manager for a pharmaceutical company overseeing clinical research. I also work with Nick part-time, and I work for the county as a deputy coroner.
Can you, my hearing's really bad. Can you give me your name again?
Lori Hannon,
Lori Cannon,
Hannon with an H.
Hannon. Thank you.
Cool. Hi, everyone. Bill Palmer. I co-own Winter Park Fraser Tire and Auto. We lease a spot right next to the gas station as well as behind the post office in Fraser. Let's see, two daughters, 4 and 7. So that one at Fraser Valley, and one still has 1 more year until she's going. Live here in Fraser with my wife, and so we bought that in 2016. So since then, right, just been working in downtown, and hopefully can help continue it to grow. Parks Thompson. I grew up here, lived here for about 33 years now. I did a lot of skiing. I was a pro skier for a number of years, about 19 years, rode for Atomic and GoPro. So I have the pro sports side and recreation knowledge. And then I also own 5, soon to be 6 businesses. And I run the Winter Park Film Festival with Connor Nelson. So I'm pretty excited to see what we can do to make Fraser become the best it can be. And I want to speak for the community. I know hundreds and hundreds of people very, very well, and they all have a voice, and I'm trying to get them involved. I want to be the public speaker. I want to be the guy that talks to everybody.
This is awkward. Sorry. My name's get out of there. My name's Abby Samuelson. And I married a local. He's never gonna leave. So I've dove right in. Started multiple businesses. I've been here for, I think I said 14 years. I lose count. I have 2 children, very young. And like I said, I have multiple businesses. One that I'm most passionate about right now is the youth programs that I do with horses. And so I'm really in the Western community, it feels like. I'm involved with ranching and getting dirty. But also I'm in the fashion community. So I talk to a lot of young kids. I feel really old now, more than lately. So I'm really engaging with the youth. And just like Parks, I just feel like I've always had a wild hair. Maybe it was hanging out with Katie Souls to like come to town meetings. And I attended quite a few early on here in the town of Fraser when things started getting ignited. And so I found a lot of passion talking to like Ingrid, all these old buildings. I started to get really connected. And at the time I thought it was unfortunate when my husband bought a property in Fraser, and now we have multiple properties. So I feel like I'm just super invested and really excited. And I want to help the younger people get more pumped and give us their opinions. So yeah.
I'm Katie Souls. I'm the board appointee, but I've lived in Fraser 49 years. Different places, but mostly in my house for a long time. And a lot of nonprofits, and I'm really excited about the potential and all the young blood coming on and making things happen. It's exciting.
I'm Barry Young. I've been here 13 years. I have 3 children that live here, 2.5 grandchildren that live here. And I only have 1 business and want to keep it that way. But I will and have to live here forever. So very, very invested. both with children, grandchildren, and so forth. One real important point, when my wife and I moved here to retire, but our children convinced us to do something otherwise. And when I started talking to all my friends about where I put my distillery, and most of them said, do not put it in Fraser. It must be in Winter Park. And we are proving them wrong. And I think this initiative is going to go very, very far to prove them wrong. So very excited about what we're all going to do together. Because to Michael's point, I do walk around here a lot, mostly with my dog, but I close my eyes and I see what can be in addition to what is.
I'm Tiffany Gatesman. I moved out here 15 years ago. I moved away a few times and always had to come back to Fraser area or the Valley. I moved away for 3 years to further my environmental education, and now I have an environmental consulting company in downtown Fraser. It's a wonderful place to have that business, and I am definitely, obviously, passionate about the environment, so I want to help tie in just the environmental sustainability and education in the downtown. I'm also very passionate, and I love hearing of the history and the uniqueness of the Fraser area, community, and valley. So I feel like that is also important to include in the downtown area to really keep that historical content. And then, like Abby, I am very into the ranch of Grand County in general, and to also tie that into the community, to the Fraser community in downtown, since it is such a aspect of the county as well as a vertical aspect of the area.
I'm Angie Nichols. I'll just know Angie because I put in my Agnes list. I don't really go by Angela. But my husband is 17 years, and we've lived, and those 7 years that we went back and forth, we came to Fraser one reason, which was the Thai restaurant. And so I just, so, you know, I want there to be a reason why people want to come to our community, but also take care of the individuals that are here full time. We own Fraser River Beer Co. I also run a national fitness and wellness company, and that is my education, is recreation and business. And I've been with the same company for 24 years. And we've grown to the point where the community is what we're looking at when we go into a community. I should state the fitness that I do is corporation and residential only. So they're private sector, not they get to know the community before we open our facilities. And I thought it would be a really mess if I didn't do it for my own community. So that's why I'm here. Yeah.
Greg, do you want to introduce yourself?
You frozen?
Clearly there's something.
Yeah. Oh.
Can you guys hear me?
Now we can.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm Greg Beckler. I'm a property owner in the DDA and developer as well. We have a few more projects planned in the area, and I'm just really excited to work with everyone on this board. And like Barry said, I think Fraser has the potential to be a destination that's more coveted than being in Winter Park, and that's exactly why I choose to do my business in Fraser.
Bill and Troy, do you want to introduce yourselves? Bill and Troy are both consultants that we've been working with for the formation of the DDA. So Bill works with Downtown Colorado Inc. They're a great resource for downtown development authorities and just economic development downtown. And then Troy's been working with us on the financial side.
Hello, It's nice to be here. Very exciting. Troy Bernberg with Northland Public Finance. We are an investment bank and municipal advisory firm. I'm coming to you today, very excited on your behalf. I have the pleasure of serving as financial advisor to 3 of the newest DDAs in the state of Colorado, and excited for you all to get started, and looking forward to being a part of the journey.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a pleasure to meet you all. I'm also very excited given the work that I've been doing with some of you at the dais, and as well as Michael and Sarah. My name is Bill Schrum. I'm Director of Operations for Downtown Colorado, Inc. Prior to that, I was the Assistant Town Manager in Eagle, Colorado during the formation of their DDA, and the Interim Director of their DDA, so I have experience in that regard. And before joining local government, I was a business owner in Boulder, Colorado, where I owned a coffee shop and a co-working space in a special district. So I have a lot of intimate experience of what it's like to be a small business owner inside of a governmental district like a DDA, and I think I can empathize with you all quite a bit. But look forward to serving as a resource for you all. And
Your lips are moving, but we can't hear you, Bill.
how about now? Okay. Yeah, the bandwidth is rather low, but thank you all. It's very nice to meet you.
I'm afraid I don't win any tech awards. Try now, Bill.
Yeah, those land sharks are eating your internet. I think that's the problem.
I don't know what I did. I apologize.
Michael's stepping in.
It's nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Still talking.
Unless it just happens on his end and it's just a coincidence, but.
Okay, now the bottom left, there's the mic shows that it's turned off.
Yeah, I think he just muted himself. Very choppy on your bandwidth. Nice to meet you all. Okay, welcome back to Bill, and hopefully this will work.
You want to introduce yourself? Cool.
I'm Becky Allison. I'm the general accountant for the town of Fraser, and I am just subbing in for Antoinette to take minutes today. Oh, I tell you, so I probably lived here long as everybody else. I was born in Kremling. I was raised here. I'll be 48 this year, so 4th generation Grand County.
Katie might have you beat by a year. And yeah, so I'm Sarah Tansroyd. I'm the assistant town manager. I've been with the town since last April. I worked for a long time in international education. I got a master's of public administration back in the day, but this is my first actual gig in local government. So it's been a great learning curve and really exciting. And I'm super excited, like everybody else, for the potential that I think Fraser has. So really excited to help get this endeavor off the ground. Do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
I'm Caitlin Starks. I'm the deputy clerk here. Born and raised here, went to Fraser Valley, went to Middle Park High School, left for 2 years and came back, and then started here back in December.
Great. So we do have some kind of nuts and bolts to get out of the way before we can jump into some of the more fun stuff. I wanted to make sure that you are all just aware. I think some of you have served on boards before, some of you may not have. So just understand some of the implications of that and make sure everybody's got a basic kind of understanding of what downtown development authorities are before we really jump into what this looks like for Fraser. So I'm going to run through a few slides here and then hand it over to Bill and Troy to give you a bit of an introduction. This is the map for the Fraser Downtown Development Authority. Hopefully you've been able to take a look at the Town of Fraser website and the webpage that we set up for the DDA. If you have not, there's a lot of resources. It goes through kind of the DDAC process, which I'll talk about in just a second. It links to documents from other communities, like the example plans of development, which we'll be talking about.
And just kind of gives you an overview of how DDAs work. So if you haven't had a time to look at those resources yet, I encourage you to do so. I think it'll be helpful in just having a foundational knowledge to start with. Just real quick, a little bit of background. In terms of some of the different endeavors that the town has recently had that's focused on economic development and kind of how this Downtown Development Authority came to be. EDAC, which Barry has served on from the beginning, I believe was started around about 2016. Is that correct? So they've been helping provide counsel to the Board of Trustees regarding kind of economic development policies. The Downtown Fraser Strategic Plan, which we will be looking at, really laid out a vision for a vibrant town center. And I think will be a nice foundation to start with as we get into the plan of development, which the DDA will operate on. We have recently offered some different economic incentive packages to try to bring in commercial development. I know a lot of you were able to attend the workshop that we did with the board a couple weeks back on economic development. So we are looking at bringing those packages back to the board and having something like that on the books again. But we did, as Michael explained, really kind of dive into exploring a downtown development authority as an important tool for economic development in the downtown last summer. So we had an advisory committee that was formed. There was 4 different meetings. Katie took part in that, as well as Barry. Am I missing anyone else here? And in the end, they unanimously, and Greg, thank you. Yeah, Greg attended many of those meetings as well. Unanimously recommended to the Board of Trustees that we move forward with this. So the rec district, Scott Ledeen participated. The fire district, the school district came to one of the meetings, and we found a lot of community support to move forward with this. So the Board of Trustees did pass an ordinance back in December, referring establishment of a DDA and authorization to increase debt principal by up to 25 million, which went to the voters. And in April, the voters approved both ballot measures. And then on May 15th, the Board of Trustees approved ordinance number 514, which formally established the DDA. And here we are.
I would say a big part of that too was Katie Souls actually walking business to business and handing out brochures and talking to people. So I want to give you those kudos.
Yeah, definitely. So we will jump into the plan of development in the meetings to come. And I know Bill's going to talk a little bit about it in his overview. But again, we really see this building off of the Fraser Downtown Strategic Plan, which was done in 2017. It involved a good amount of community engagement and really presented kind of 5 goals for Fraser's downtown: developing a vibrant town center, preserving and building upon Fraser's character, developing a diverse and resilient economy, increasing mobility choices, and expanding and diversifying local housing options. So I think we've got a lot of exciting things going on that fit into this. The board rezoned the Riverwalk district to make it mixed use and require ground floor commercial, and really try to develop kind of a Main Street initiative off of Highway 40, and we use this to kind of hopefully further develop all of downtown, but really capitalize on being right on the Fraser River there. Providing additional economic incentives to businesses. We recognize that it's difficult to make a business successful up here right now. So really seeing how we can better attract and support businesses that are a good fit for Fraser. The Fraser Valley Arts Center is actively fundraising for a Fraser Center for the Creative Arts. I think I said that correctly. To go on to Clayton Court as part of our Main Street. And then really the town's really working to help build out workforce housing options and improve childcare options. And we see this as vital to providing a workforce for these businesses, as well as having year-round residents that can serve as customers for businesses downtown. But I think it's the Board of Trustees and town staff really recognizing the importance of businesses to our community and really trying to prioritize that economic development and making Fraser a destination in and of itself. So with that, and I apologize, this is pretty small, but in terms of board member terms, when you are appointed, The statute does require us to stagger initial terms. And so after the initial staggering, they will be for 4 years. So Angie Nichols, Barry Young, Lori Hannon, and Parks Thompson, your terms are set to expire in 2028. Greg Becker, Abby Samuelson, 2027, Nick Crabb and Steve Fitzgerald in 2026, Tiffany Gatesman and William Palmer in 2025, and Katie remains with us at the pleasure of the Board of Trustees. And we base this off of the votes that were received when you were nominated for your positions by the Board of Trustees. When there was a tiebreaker, our mayor drew names from a hat. So that is our very official process. So I included a few documents in the packet for today's agenda. We're not going to read through all of them, but the Colorado DDA board member manual, that is put together by DCI, and I think is just a really useful tool to orientate yourself to DDAs and being a board member. In conjunction with looking at Colorado statutes, which just dictate how we can operate. But I would encourage you to take a look at that. We'll refer to that throughout as needed in terms of what statute dictates that we do as a board. The other documents are from CIRSA, which is our insurance provider. So one is email suggestions for elected and appointed officials. This has to do with public meeting laws. The DDA is considered a governmental entity, and so we are subject, or you are subject to rules that govern appointed and elected government officials. If more than convened to discuss matters of policy related to the DDA, that is considered a meeting. So it has to be published and open to the public. Email can get a little tricky with us. So this document outlines what you can or should not be doing with email in regards to those open meeting requirements. Doing things like that, sharing resources and references, but we don't want to have discussions about policy matters through email because that would be considered a meeting that should be public.
So just one thing I just want to emphasize with that. If you would like to have a meeting, especially outside of here, please do so. It's great to coordinate that meeting through Sarah, who can help get something published on our agenda, even if it's at the coffee shop. Those are things that we have to do with our own board. We've had coffee shop discussions about Victoria Village, different things. You can meet anywhere you like. We just need to make sure that we have that planned for. It is kind of a strange thing that, like, three of us can't talk about policy for DDA. That it is an important thing. If you're in violation of these types of laws, it is something that can be held against you, even in a lawsuit potentially. So if you have any questions about that, please let us know. We know that some of you guys are brand new to this, and we want to make sure that you guys are comfortable and that you're getting answers to your questions that you may have. Please let myself or Sarah know. And if you'd like to schedule a routine meeting or just invite members to the public for feedback to talk about a specific or broad topics as far as downtown, we can get that published on our website. We can get that published on our agenda, and we're meeting the requirements for open records, and we can have those meetings. We can have those discussions anywhere you would like. You don't have to be in Grand County. It just has to be published. So just something to keep in mind. And again, as we're going through this presentation, any questions you guys have, whether you want to ask them today, email us later, please let us know how we can help you guys be informed of your roles, and just to make sure that we're going about this the right way and staying within state law on this type of thing. Yeah, Abby.
I mean, that's one of the things that I would lean into pretty heavily to get community input. Some of the people that didn't make it onto the DDA committee that are residents and have businesses, I want them to feel as if they have that comfortable ground to speak and it be done in a timely fashion. I think we tried to do a few of those at the Town of Winter Park, but they're at busy park events between 5 and 8, which is the work time. I don't know if I'm talking into this, if you can hear me, but I want it to be thoroughly thought through when we decide to have those, because I think they're going to be really important.
Right.
Definitely. And as we delve into that plan of development, we'll definitely have sessions where we invite the public to provide feedback and input.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And absolutely, there's no violation of this. If two of you want to kind of like, hey, we're going to sit down with so-and-so to talk about this specific project or downtown, you can do that without a publication. It's just when there's three or more.
Oh, okay. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's why the email chains don't work, right? You never want to reply all. If you've got an opinion about something, because it's considered a meeting, because we're all sharing the same ideas and opinions. Basically, don't say anything. Just keeps you out of trouble.
And it also is true that you can't do an email chain where Katie says something to Abby and then Abby says something to Parks and it's going around. So you don't have three of you on the same email, but you basically have three of you on the same email. So just being mindful of those requirements. And this also has to do with the CORA, the Colorado Open Records Act. So any documents, including your emails regarding the DDA, somebody can request those and we would have to provide those. So being mindful of that and of what we choose to say via email.
So logistics are great. You guys can talk, emails to the whole group. Logistics, like, hey, let's meet here at so-and-so, and maybe we should publish a meeting, at Abby's Ranch, and let's have a discussion. It's great. Logistics are fine. It's just when you're discussing policy related items, because you are the stewards of taxpayer dollars, it has certain limitations on you. That's why this thing is so tied to you. So again, anything you'd like to know, like coordinate with us. It's easy for us to publish an agenda. It's 24-hour notice. Publishing these meetings is a requirement, is a bare minimum requirement, but we're happy to get out there as much as you want to. We can push it through social media, try to get some people to show up, just whatever you guys want to do, we can work with you.
Okay. And then the other handout, also provided by CIRSA, which is the insurance that we have for the town, our insurance provider, is the Colorado State Code of Ethics and General Conflict of Interest Rules. So making sure that anybody who has a direct, so I'll just read it. No local government official shall perform an official act which directly and substantially grants an economic benefit to a business or other undertaking in which the official has a substantial financial interest. So if a member has such an interest in a matter proposed or pending before the body, the member must disclose the conflict, not participate in the discussion, not attempt to influence others, and then leave the room is not expressly required but recommended. On to talk about what sort of financial interest might trigger that. Given that many of you are property owners, business owners within the DDA, there are definitely times when this may come into play. So we need to make sure we're being cognizant of this and that members are recusing themselves if they do have that direct financial interest. Any questions about that? No gifts more than $75, or that could be used to influence you.
So for example, if the DDA wanted to financially support Nick Crabb to have a beer garden next to his business or something, great initiative. As far as how you vote to approve those types of funds, that's not something that Nick can actually participate in because he has a conflict of interest. Just kind of an example there.
And just to be clear, Nick can participate in
Any
the discussion though, right?
So all of our meetings are public meetings,
Correct.
but public comment will be at the pleasure of the board at that time, if they want to take it, that sort of thing. Is that something we're gonna?
Yeah, so
build into our-
hopefully at our next meeting, we'll introduce a template for bylaws. The other kind of consultant on this we've been working with, our legal counsel, has been Butler Snow. They've worked with a number of DDAs around the state. So they help make sure we abided by all the election rules and formation requirements. So we've asked them to provide a draft template of bylaws that we'll bring to the next meeting for discussion. And so things like that can be established in part through the bylaws and or through resolutions to allow things like public comment at the start of each meeting.
Yeah, it's a little tricky with the new organization because we're currently operating without those bylaws, but once we have those in place, those will dictate some of those items.
And I have another question that might be for Troy or Bill. So you mentioned liability for violating some of these. Is this board, do we fall under the protection of the town of Fraser, so long as we're acting within the scope of our authority, or do we have any kind of protection?
This will be part of the process. You'll actually be looking at soliciting your own attorney at some point. As far as the transition to that, we can see if Bill or Troy has any thoughts on that.
It's my understanding that Katie is correct, that as long as you're acting within the duties of your
Bill,
stewardship
you might
of-
want to turn off your video since it seems like we both have bad internet connections. It might improve the audio quality.
Sure. How is that for you? A little better?
Katie, I will add, one of the things that we will be looking at will be an IGA between the DDA and the town of Fraser for what sort of services will be provided by the town.
Gotcha.
In terms of staff resources, potentially some financial kind of seed money to get started. But my understanding is that DDAs often fall under a town's insurance policy. And there's a couple different ways to set that up. So we let our underwriters know that you are all considered additional exposures, but would fall under that insurance umbrella, as I understand it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Steve, did you have a question?
I do. Can you hear me?
Can we hear? We never got the sound back, did we?
The internet was unstable.
I was having trouble with it.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Oh.
I believe you're plugged in directly, right?
I can hear you.
So probably those of us who are online can hear each other and they can't.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Maybe.
See what that does. So when you jumped up, I'm gonna raise mine. I don't know where the volume, but we lost.
Steve commented that what you stated. Greg says he can hear Steve in DCI operations. Great online. It's tough to hear those in the room.
Bill, do me a favor, just turn off the system. That guy. And let's turn it back on.
And Bill from DCI said board members are covered under SURSA as long as you are acting within the proper roles as board members.
Great. Cool.
And that's something that SURSA has talked in detail with our trustees about, that you are covered if you are within the scope of your role. If you're going rogue and doing your own thing outside of the defined roles of a board member, then you are not covered.
Steve, can you hear us?
Yep.
Can hear us. Okay.
Yep.
Oh,
There we
can
go.
hear you.
You can hear us now?
Yes.
Yay. I have
like to
no idea
proceed
where
with
all
your-
those graphics come, but whenever I make a gesture, they So just hearkening back to the prior conversation about using Nick as an example with Camber and a conflict of interest and not being able to vote. I would assume, but correct me if I'm wrong, that it's entirely appropriate for Nick to participate in a conversation, have a point of view, but then recuse himself from voting. Is that accurate?
That's a good question.
I think the difficult matter, and we can seek further legal counsel to get better clarification on this, Steve. I know SURSA's recommendation here is to not participate in the discussion. I feel like the hard part is that you're not allowed to attempt to influence others. So I feel like there'd be a very fine line there between participating in the discussion and sharing your opinion and that not influencing others.
Yeah, it just seems like every single person who's a member of this body will be subject to that in some way, shape, or form. And that's going to be difficult to navigate.
Yeah, what was the example? I already forget the example that was being used.
The beer garden at CR.
Oh, with the beer garden. I think it is related. You can't be a part of the discussions. But we can get you some better guidance on that. We'll craft some language and shoot that out to everybody.
So maybe.
Yeah, I mean, but by illustration, there's a bunch of hospitality-oriented members, in terms of their businesses, and I would assume some of the Downtown Development Authority conversation will be about how we promote and build and manage those businesses, and that would preclude a lot of them from participating, which doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right. And I mean, I'm thinking through like the difference between talking about a business enhancement grant that's available to all businesses in general versus something that's maybe specific to a particular business. Bill, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, if you don't mind just a second, but speaking from experience, Sarah, I think you're on the right track. The way that we handled this previously in Eagle, obviously, again, I appreciate that Fraser is a small town. And are you all hearing me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. I appreciate that Fraser's a small town just like Eagle. The bifurcation, Steve, is really much like what Sarah just described, is that you all as board members can very much have a part of the discussion around the strategies and the potential outcomes of your policies, right? But I would advise you to make sure, for the sake of transparency, even that you want to promote the idea of transparency and fairness, that those policies not even be as specific as saying beer garden, but simply outdoor dining, right? And when you're talking about it a little bit more generally, and any applicant could potentially apply, that gives you the permission to be a part of that discussion. If it came to a specific application from a business owner for those funds to that business, now all of a sudden that it's a little bit cleaner to say they shouldn't be a part of the conversation. They have an active application. So that's one of the ways that we navigated that tension in Eagle. It can be done, but yes, it is always something to be mindful of.
Thanks.
And that application would give us the outline.
Can you make sure you're talking into the mic?
Katie, so the application itself would give the whole board an idea of what the proposal is. So. good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the reality is there's just going to be a lot of fine lines because most of you have business stakes of some sort or another. And we're talking about economic development and, supporting businesses,
And there's definitely a difference between direct financial support and improving wayfinding or improving signage, marketing efforts as a whole, where it's not directly just tied just to one business financially gaining from one agreement or incentive package.
So the bylaws are going to have like more clear verbiage for helping us navigate that. Will that be the?
I don't know if those are specifically in the bylaws. We
Okay.
could take a look at that. But we can provide you more information based on like the statute and just consulting with our legal counsel on
Okay.
exactly what that looks like and maybe provide some of these hypotheticals.
Thanks.
Yeah, there's a whole chapter in the state statutes for Colorado that talk about DDAs and how they can operate and stuff. So all that won't necessarily be written into the bylaws, but there'll be some back and forth of us, informing you and you got questions about things. I'll help you.
I read through the DDA manual that these guys wrote, and it clearly states all that. It's really well written. It takes a while, but it's all there.
They attempt to be clever. It's somewhat entertaining at points. All right, next up, we do have a resolution. The one thing that the Colorado statute does dictate that happens at your first meeting of the year is passing a resolution designating the posting place for the Fraser Downtown Development Authority board meeting notices and agendas. So I have provided a template of a resolution in your packet. What town staff would recommend is similar to what we do for our Board of Trustees meetings. So for our Board of Trustees meetings, notices and agendas shall be posted on the Town of Fraser website. I've added in here, or the Fraser DDA website once that's established, no later than 24 hours prior to the scheduled regular DDA meeting. We would endeavor to post it sooner than that, but statute does require that you have it posted at least 24 hours in advance. And then this says it may also be posted at the Fraser Post Office and or Fraser Town Hall. So this resolution would require the posting online, currently via the Town of Fraser website, which is where this meeting was posted via our agenda center. I'll add in separate from this resolution, you can sign up to get notices of whenever anything related to the DDA agenda-wise is posted, as can anybody in the public. And so I will send that out as well to the other applicants so that they know they can get notices to attend the meetings and provide input if they would like. But again, this resolution would require that it be posted on our website.
Sarah, before we do the resolution, can Caitlin give the oath to Steve so
Sure.
that he's an official member, please?
Oh, yes.
You ready, Steve?
I'm braced.
You want to just read it to him and have him repeat it?
And sorry, folks, for not being there in person. It's just a day of back-to-back meetings and I didn't have time to get across town.
No worries.
Okay, are you ready? I'll do it.
Is your mic on? Caitlin? There you go.
Are you there? Okay. So you'll just repeat after me. And then insert your name.
I insert your name. No, I just couldn't resist. I, Steve Fitzgerald,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the state of Colorado,
and of the state of Colorado,
the Fraser Town Code,
the Fraser Town Code,
and faithfully perform the duties of the
and faithfully perform the duties of the
Fraser Downtown Development Authority Board, DDA,
Fraser Downtown Development Authority Board /DDA,
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
So any discussion regarding the resolution?
Again, if possible, at least to be able to, I know our little display board at the post office is filling up. I don't know if they'll give us a bigger one. I doubt it. If they would, that would be nice.
Michael is smiling because
Yeah.
this is the conversation he had with me yesterday.
Yeah, it's like, this sounds familiar, but I'm really partial to having something posted there because pretty much everybody goes into the post office and that's something they want by.
And something I would recommend is for like your formal meeting, something like this, if we have a recorded meeting, those would be great to post. If you want to have some informal meetings that have been discussed, those are good just to push out to the website and get that going.
Yeah.
So you can kind of separate those two if you were to think of them that way.
All right, well, I'll make a motion to approve Fraser DDA resolution number 2024-0601.
Second.
Any further
Over.
discussion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Steve, aye. Greg, was that an aye?
Yeah, that was an aye, sorry.
Thank you. No, you're good. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and hand this over then to Bill to kind of jump into DDAs for us.
And I'm going to scoot out. Thanks, everybody. Please feel free to stop by, call, email, and look forward to seeing you around and doing this work.
Thanks, Michael. And thank you, Sarah. Again, just sound check, making sure everyone can hear me okay.
Yep.
Great. So I do have just a couple of quick slides. As Katie could attest, there's a lot of information about what it is to do this whole DDA thing. And we, as a resource, are available for you to answer all of those questions. So one part of this is, where do you even start? Wanted to give you at least a sense of what some of the most important things to think about might be and introduce what DCI would be available to do for you all as an organization. So again, I briefly introduced myself as Director of Operations with DCI. And if you're not familiar with who Downtown Colorado Inc. is, we're a nonprofit member-based organization. Our focus has really been around helping urban renewal authorities, downtown development authorities, and business improvement districts throughout Colorado, as well as local champions and local municipalities that have main streets or downtown concerns. We really do well in the information, education, and advocacy roles. So giving you guys, insight on what other districts are doing, best practices, examples of agreements, those kind of things are really the strength of DCI. And because the town of Fraser is a VIP member, all of you as board members have access to our resources. So that's something that we can certainly help introduce you to, get you guys access to our website and be able to not only look at the DDA board manual that Sarah's been sharing, but a bunch of the other resources we have, as well as our educational events. We have tons of webinars. I think we have a webinar, it seems, almost every week between now and the end of the year. We have a lot of in-person events. One that might be relevant for you all is our Metro Mobile Tour, which is coming up in August, and it's an opportunity to tour Denver's DDA, as well as Colfax Business Improvement District and some other urban renewal areas, to where you can see examples of what this work looks like on the ground. We have our Tax Increment Finance Summit that's going on in October in Pueblo, and all of these different things would be things that you would be available to attend as members. So we appreciate the town of Fraser being a member, and we want to extend all of that, all those resources to you all as well as you're getting started. So the things that I wanted to just touch on briefly here for you all is to again sort of reinforce or introduce the ideas of what's the driving purpose of your Downtown Development Authority, a little bit of background about how it is that you're going to do the work that you would be doing, the role of the board as you're doing that work, and a little bit about what that might look like for the town. And Sarah has mentioned a couple of different times this plan of development. That's really going to be a guiding document for you as you get started. But I want to help bring some context to what very successful plans of developments look like and how you would complement that with some other work. So we want to be sure that we're couching all of this within the statute. Again, as Sarah and Michael had said, there is Article 25 of the Colorado Revised Statutes that speaks to the authorities of Downtown Development Authority. And the number one overarching purpose is that DDAs are formed for the prevention and deterrence of blighting conditions. And you do that by executing what you describe as your plan of development. Now, that right there, it has a lot of words that might have a lot of different connotations for different folks, but a couple things that are really key. Prevention and deterrence, as opposed to an urban renewal authority, you have the ability to be proactive in your activity, whereas an urban renewal authority is very much reactive because they are supposed to remediate blight and blighting conditions. So proactive activity is being granted to you by the statute by way of this wording. And that's kind of important about the stance that you can take. But similarly, it's blighting conditions. And there's a variety of different things that qualify as blighting conditions. If you don't have utility access to a lot, or if you have a really awkward shaped lot, or if you have not enough egress and ingress to access a lot, all of those things are technically blighting conditions as well. And again, the proactive stance here would be if you recognize that you have a key parcel in your downtown that maybe doesn't have utility access or doesn't have proper infrastructure support or connectivity, you can proactively look to do permanent infrastructural development to provide that for the lot. And what that would do is prevent or deter blighting conditions from appearing. So that's really sort of what the state statute grants you the ability to do. Now, in practical terms, the day-to-day operation is that that's not going to be language you use in every single action that you take. But it's important to understand really that's what's the governing umbrella for your activity. The rest of the actions that you need to do by statute have to do with communication. And I love hearing from you all that you have an interest in getting your stakeholders around you you want to be a sounding board and an opportunity for them to share their perspective and for you to communicate the activity of the DDA. That's fantastic. Like, that is part of what your state statute mandate is. You need to be able to be functionally operational, secure a space. You do have roles that you need to appoint and do management in good order of your operation. One last thing that's key here is that as a quasi-governmental district, as Michael had mentioned, there is the idea of hiring separate legal counsel. You are a part of the town, but a DDA is not the board, right? And there may be times that it's perfectly appropriate for the focus of a DDA to be different than that of the town council, because you represent executing your plan of development. The council has a much bigger focus. Your focus and charge is executing the plan of development. And so, you want to be friends and colleagues and, be able to implement intergovernmental agreements and so on. But you unabashedly have the responsibility of representing your districts, your constituents, and executing the plan of development. Sometimes that having separate legal counsel and other staff can help you be able to do that. So that will be something that you might want to consider down the road. So this example here of stages of a DDA is really something to hone in on for the first at least 5 to 7 years. And Troy might be able to speak to this a little bit better, because so much of your focus initially is going to be about money. And I don't want to make this a cash grab or anything like that, but the practical reality of a DDA is that you really are empowered based on how much funding you're able to leverage to make this stuff work. And over the course of 30 years, there's essentially 3 different stages that a lot of DDAs around the state might have. The first 5 to 7 years, I would encourage you to really make sure that each activity that you are doing is growing your increment. Because being that this is something that grows and evolves over time, it's like compound interest. So every inch you gain now is worth a foot 10, 15, 20 years from now. So think about that and make sure that your activity is really looking at instigating additional increment. If you're able to do that, there's this middle phase where you have a collection of policies, you have funds in the bank, you're able to take on maybe a little bit more robust projects than what you could at the very beginning. And this is what when you'll really start to see some change in your communities, but that's not going to happen in the first couple of years. This is likely to happen in the 7 to 10, 15-year range. And then in the later part of your DDA's existence, that's when you have not only a successful built, in this example analogy, forest of work that you've done, but you can start to, manicure it a little bit more and spend the rest of your money on things that don't necessarily drive increment, but drive public benefit. So things like the benches and the streetscaping and things like that. Not to say that that's not important at the beginning, but when you have a certain tenure or timeline for your funds and whether or not you choose to renew your DDA after 30 years, if you have to allocate those funds, you're able to do so and not necessarily worry about driving additional increment, but can round out the rest of the placemaking and things that you might have a focus on. I'll also leave you with this idea that Fort Collins, Longmont, and Grand Junction are 3 of the oldest DDAs in the state. They've been doing this for nearly 40 plus years. So if you want examples of what DDAs look like that far down the road, take a look at some of the budgets and some of the projects that those 3 downtown development authorities are doing. That's the kind of stuff that you're going to be looking at the later stages of your DDA. I would encourage you to focus at the beginning on the increment. And other newer DDA examples like Inglewood, which again, I know Troy is very familiar with. Inglewood is a great example of how to hit the ground running and focus on driving increment and still providing some programmatic value to your stakeholders. So this plan of development is, again, something that we've mentioned a couple of different times, that this is really the enabling document that gives you your powers. You want to be sure that you write it in such a way that it enables a lot of different opportunity, and it does not restrict what you might do. If you put constraining language in there or saying that this activity must be done a certain way, that is setting the guidelines for the rest of the 30-year or further direction of your DDA. And changing a plan of development it can be done by council, but it's a significant lift. So make sure that you write this in such a way that it captures your priorities and your vision and enables you to execute strategies to solve those. But it doesn't necessarily get into specifically what those strategies are. You can update those with policies and with strategic updates and strategic planning, but separate the two. And a framework for organizational strategy that I like is called VMOSA, Vision, Mission, Objective, Strategy, and Action. And what I would suggest is that you look at the plan of development as a place to capture your long-term permanent vision and mission of the Downtown Development Authority. Keep the language in that level, and then look at your DDA policies and strategic updates, your work plan, as the place to where you can do a 1 to 3 year, what are my near-term objectives? What's the strategy for solving those objectives? And what are the actions that we can take? And again, going back to Stephen's question about how there might very likely be overlap in interest, when you're talking broadly about objective, strategy, and action, that should be something that all of you are able to engage in regardless of your financial interest. If you're speaking about the application for, hey, we have this action plan to deploy $40,000 towards facade improvements, and you have a business that's applying for a facade grant, that would be something that you'd want to recuse yourself from. But if your policies and strategic discussions are centered around objectives and strategies and actions, and they apply to the entire district as a whole, that should be a very safe place for you to have your conversations. Any questions about that at the moment? All right, hearing none. So again, I'll just provide a couple suggestions here about, from my experience, not only in Eagle, but working with DDAs throughout the state. When you're talking about these policies, it's important to keep in mind that policies should generally maintain a certain ethos as you're putting them together. You do have to submit your budget to council. You do have to create regular strategic updates, and you do have to have oversight. But when you do that, you want to be sure that you're incorporating ways of making them transparent, making them well publicized to the public and the other stakeholders. You really do not, especially in a small town, and I'll again speak to the concern I had from Eagle, you want to be absolutely certain that you are not creating the potential for the public perception of bias or favoritism or, impropriety when it comes to these public funds. So making sure that these policies are broad, or that anyone who applies for certain reasons would find themselves able to apply, that you don't write the policies to say it must be a beer joint or a distillery or some place that has an alcohol license with a patio of 2,000 square feet that's on the corner of this street and that street. Like, if that's your policy, you're probably going to have a bad time. So make sure that you're keeping these things, broadly applicable to your objectives, and make sure you're always tracing them back ultimately to the plan of development, because that's what's legally justifying your work. So the role of the board here is really to help guide staff, when it comes to the implementation of this work. And much like being a CEO of an organization and having a board of directors, you've got Michael and Sarah and your executive director as your CEO. You're the board of directors. You're the ones that set the vision, the mission, and provide oversight on their activity. You want to be able to strategize, like, what are your near-term mission objectives, and give that insight and direction to your staff, but let them do the implementation. Now, at the very beginning, you don't have any sort of agreements or applications to worry about, or some of that stuff, but I would caution you to think that your job is not to negotiate with these applicants for big projects or whatever it might be. let the staff handle that. Let the staff have the conversations with your individual applicants and then bring you the results that follow your policies. And with that oversight, you can say, hey, staff, we reserve the right to override you in certain ways, or hey, you did a good job, you implemented our policy, we take your recommendations and we'll execute it accordingly. But drawing that line functionally will really help keep you guys focused on what your strength is that gathering the perspective of your stakeholders, having, worthwhile conversations and discussions of different perspectives amongst yourselves, and setting the vision and the mission of how you execute the plan of development. That's your role. So the more you're in that space, the more successful I think you can be. And the truth be told, the more you can get done, because when you get into the weeds on certain projects, it really bogs down the rest of the organization. And lastly, the last couple of things I wanted to cover here is that going back again to the strategic plan and the work that the DDAC committee did, you did a very good job of teeing up the DDA to say, these are the very specific things that you want to be focused on. And again, I appreciate that Michael and Sarah mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting. So you're talking about developing a town center, the infrastructure needs for downtown, supporting your local businesses, connectivity and transportation, diversifying your housing options. These are the things that are likely going to be represented in your plan of development and would filter down through your VMOSA, your vision, your mission, your objectives, strategies, and actions. So when this is the space that your activity is focused on, you're really going to be fulfilling your roles. And again, going back to the strategic plans that you've already looked at, it becomes very easy for you, for the sake of transparency, to justify to the public, listen, we're as a DDA implementing this plan that we've had in town for a very long time. This happens to be an additional financial vehicle to help make some of these things happen. You're not making it up on the fly. You're not trying to serve special interests. These documents have been out and published for a very long time, and you're simply trying to execute them. When that's the conversation that you're having with your stakeholders, it's very easy to justify your activity. And then lastly, I'm sure Troy can speak about tax increment financing real quick. And I'll simply leave this to say, if there's any of you that have questions about where increment comes from, I would be in a position to answer some of that for you. But tax increment finance is really driving the financial means for where you're able to implement your resources. And it's really key that you all understand what drives increment, because as I said at the very beginning, for a brand new DDA, this really needs to be a lot of your thought process of how can we generate more increment? Because when you're down here in the first 5 years, your increment might be small, but every inch you gain here is going to be worth X amount when it comes to 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So that's all of the slides that I have. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to have a discussion with you.
Any questions for Bill before Troy jumps in on more of the financial piece? Is Troy still there?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm still here.
Okay. I didn't see the little icon.
No,
Going once, going twice. Hopefully nobody's ready to quit and come back in 5 to 10 years and there's more money to play with. The foundation's important.
It is. And it's a lot of information. It's drinking from a fire hydrant. I get all of that. Again, Troy Bernberg with Northland. I'm going to, my role is multifold. Even though I'm financial advisor, I'm really helping with some of those infrastructural and foundational items. Okay. I've helped my clients actually draft policy around the investment of tax increment. And I think that's an important place to start. A lot of my role before I start is educational. I do sit on the DCI board, so educating folks about these great tools is a passion of mine and has been a passion of mine. So a lot of my role is not just figuring out financial stuff, budgets, tracking increment, developer negotiations. It's board education. And a lot of times I serve as a resource, just like DCI does, to help my clients, their boards, really understand the tool that you have available to you. And tax increment financing, it's a big topic, but ultimately, I like to narrow it down to it's an incentive tool. It's a way to control your own destiny, and I'll talk about that in a second. It's about investment, and it's about your fiduciary duty to your taxpayers and risk management. So that's a whole lot, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with financing, okay? So when it comes to tax increment, all the comments made are you're not going to get a lot of it right away. I think patience is important, okay? Let's say a project starts next January. It might not hit the tax rolls for almost 2-3 years, okay, depending on the construction timeline. So there is a lag between new development and the tax increment valuation and property taxes that it creates. And the PK Kaiser versus Aurora Urban Renewal Authority Supreme Court case in Colorado has helped really narrow where does increment come from. And it's simply new development or redevelopment of an existing property, okay? Yes, there is a market gain to surrounding properties when a development or project goes in, and the assessor has the right to give you some of that increased market value, but it's up to their discretion, okay? What I like to tell my clients, it's easiest to think of new development, new construction. That's where you get increment, okay? And you've got at least an initial 30-year life cycle. DDAs can last much longer than that, thanks to some legislative efforts last year led by Grand Junction DDA. And so in these early years, it is important to put in infrastructure, to be educated, to understand the tools you have, okay? And be patient about when those tools become available to you. Out of the DDAs I currently represent, only one of them has a mill levy. So most of my clients live by tax increment alone. That means that administratively, you're going to have to fund some of those efforts from tax increment. I will say that in your early years, as you're learning to crawl and walk, okay, the increments coming in slowly. As you walk and become a teenager and go through puberty, you're going to have a lot more programming and projects, okay? So in those early years, you're going to be spending more maybe on administrative or pay-go items, okay? So anything that you can fund within a calendar year, that's what I define as pay-go. That includes administration, that will eventually include items like programming, whether that be beautification or what have you. But over your entire life cycle, the majority of your funding will go to projects and programming. So a lot of my clients right now spend more money on administrative stuff, things like executive directors, things like advisors, consultants, legal, accounting, those kinds of things. But as time goes on and your revenue grows, you're going to have more money to really implement in your community by way of programming or projects. Besides pay-go, you'll have two other primary tools to affect projects, okay? And these two tools that I'm about to go into are more for bigger, larger dollar items, more catalytic projects, okay? Projects from which you know you will get a certain tax increment revenue stream from. The first is called a redevelopment and reimbursement agreement. Sometimes they're called a development and reimbursement agreement, okay? But the reimbursement agreement is a very powerful tool and probably going to be your most used tool over your life cycle. And this is a contractual agreement that would count against your debt limit. And what that agreement effectively says is, developer, you want to build something. You've got a financial gap in your project. meaning you've got a certain dollar amount that you need to make your project happen. Well, that's how TIF is an incentive, okay? TIF's an incentive to that developer to come to Fraser instead of somewhere else that may not have a DDA or TIF, okay? So you're going to attract a lot more interest because now you have a very powerful incentive tool. But that incentive tool via a reimbursement agreement also gives you control. And it's a risk management tool. And what do I mean by that? I counsel all of my clients, you're never going to write a blank check to a project, ever. Okay? What you're going to do is you're going to construct this redevelopment agreement so that the developer builds what they want to build with that financial gap included, and the developer installs everything at up front. Then, if they've performed under their contractual agreement, built what they said they were going to build, then you reimburse them on an agreed upon amount. Okay? And that depends on two things. One, how much increment does the project generate? That's where certainly a role like mine comes in. I come in, I look at the project documents, I look at financials, making sure that the developer can finish the project. Ultimately, that's the biggest risk. But if they don't finish and they don't perform, you don't pay them. Okay? And so understanding the TIF that's created from each project will be important to telling you how much you can reimburse. Number two, you're never going to reimburse 100%. At least my clients don't yet. My policy documents give you a guideline of ranges, all right? You guys have to keep some of that increment for administrative and sustainable operations. So my clients that don't have tax mills, they have to hold back a certain amount from each project because otherwise they won't be able to operate. Okay, the second thing that it depends on is what can you spend it on? Okay, now this is an incentive tool to developers to incentivize them to build a project that hopefully you want in your town. Okay, and they say to you, hey, I've got a $2 million gap on a $10 million project. I can come up with 8, but I need that 2. Well, you have to be clear. You're not going to get that 2 up front. You're going to get that 2 when the project is delivered and there's a CO. Okay. But what you can do is say, hey, well, I'm not going to pad your profits, but if you have a component of infrastructure, anything that adds value to the public safety, just as the statute outlines, that's where you can help a developer fill that financing gap because you're using your fiduciary duty of taxpayer dollars for public benefit, okay? So if a new project needs new infrastructure, street, curb, gutter, utilities, all of that, that's where you can invest your dollars. And you're investing your dollars kind of in that boring stuff, but that boring stuff is getting that developer to build that project in your community. Okay. And so that's a lot of information about how you can use your revenues. There's one last option, and that's to actually issue a tax-exempt municipal bond obligation. That's what our firm does every day. We sell municipal tax-exempt bonds in the public securities market to fund all natures of governmental public projects, okay? And so I would say that in your life cycle, your initial life cycle of 30 years, there might be 1 or 2 opportunities to bond, okay? Why is that, you might ask? Well, there's a little more risk when a bond is issued, okay? And in fact, you're not going to be issuing the bond yourself. The town will be issuing the bond because you can't issue debt by yourself. But you're going to be called what is an obligor. So you're going to be responsible for the debt, but the town issues it because that's how the statute has it working. So now there's no real risk. If the project doesn't get built, there's reputational risk to certainly consider with a bond issue. But with a bond issue, because there is that slightly higher risk profile, You also want to make sure that it's a very catalytic project, something transformative, okay? Whether it be housing and mixed use commercial on the bottom. It can really look what is right for your community, what's right for Fraser, but catalytic, meaning in size and impact, okay? You need to make sure that it generates enough TIF to repay the bond. So, and typically those projects, you know, come around, you know, once, twice, maybe 3 or 4 times in a 30-year life cycle. That's why I say reimbursement agreements are going to be kind of your number one tool in the toolbox to invest your tax increment. And I like to think of most of your dollars being spent as an investment in Fraser. Okay. You've developed this great, amazing economic development tool. And really all your dollars are meant to be invested within the DDA for all the things that we've talked about. Let me check my notes here. The budget documents. So those are all kind of the ways you can do it. But you know, the pay-go is going to be your annual budget, what you're wanting to pay for in a fiscal or calendar year. And I help my clients say, how do we figure out where our budget dollars go? I kind of get looped in with the county assessor to make sure that the assessment and TIF calculation reports are correct. Yes, I have found simple mathematical errors in reports for other clients from other counties, not referencing Grand County at all. But those are some of the oversight that you need to make sure that the dollars are coming in when they're supposed to. And again, to circle back on my opening comment, new construction is the easiest way to think of where your tax increment dollars are going to be. And so you're going to be a little administratively heavy in terms of your budget in these early years. But then as the increment starts flowing, you want to leverage grants. Absolutely. That's a big role as a DDA. You can be a grant matcher. You want to partner with the town of Fraser on other grants and opportunities to find free money to make your dollars go farther. So in fact, my investment policy clearly states that the DDA has to look for grant funding and free money. And so, you know, that's an easy lift, right? There may not be that free money available to you, but I always counsel to seek it out. Policy can be very powerful. I may be in the minority saying this, but I do not believe policy is law. I believe policy is guideline. And that's what's really important about some of Bill's comments about keeping this flexible. All of my policy documents for my clients keep my clients nimble and flexible while staying in a lane, right? You're never going to write a blank check. You're only going to reimburse on large projects. You're only going to pay out on large projects via reimbursement, not up front. So a lot of those things will help you be good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. With that, I've laid another large platter of information on your plates there. So happy to answer any questions, but I'm at least along for the ride for a little bit, and I'm an additional resource to you all.
I'm curious about small projects. Like initially when we're looking at small dollars, improving parking, like there's a number of within the districts, areas where cars park for businesses adjacent to private property that are mud holes, you know, bringing in gravel to help treat that. Is that something that, well, if we put it in our plan for parking, how would that process work? Could we just fund it through the town or do a reimbursement or hire a contractor because it's
right? So what I would suggest in council in that situation is, well, we need increment to pay for that. So now I believe it's a perfectly good investment of the tax increment, but I have to counsel my clients, hey, we want to build stuff. We want to help our municipalities with these types of projects. Well, I have to tell them, well, there has to be some kind of project involved in the DDA to generate these dollars. So it doesn't have to be maybe adjacent. If it's adjacent to these potholed parking lots, that's a no-brainer that you can fund them from that new development. I just, for me, we have to think about where the revenue is going to come from first before our big eyes and big stomachs want to tackle these important projects.
Okay,
Um,
so we have these big projects going on.
Yeah.
Down, are we obligated for their increment to use it in where those projects are located?
You are limited to using increment within the boundaries of the DDA.
Right.
So
Okay.
that is your
So something like this, that gravel parking area is not contiguous to the project, but it is within the DDA boundary.
Yes, you can spend it on that project. Some really small wins. I love singles and doubles in terms of your early years of operation. Englewood, they did a small 150,000 grant. They partnered with the city of Englewood to put in to update a little paseo, a little opening between two businesses. They put in some bike racks and some other benches and little things. And the DDA was able to help implement that project. Most of it was funded through CDOT. So, some of those Main Street programs are great ways to get singles and doubles when you don't have a lot of dollars coming into the DDA. So that's another place that, I would counsel you on searching. Some of the small investment programs that, for example, Englewood's now developed, I actually counseled them that they had to save up a certain dollar amount before they implemented the program, because we didn't want to implement the program and not have enough to fund kind of the need that we were anticipating. We didn't want to just fund one project. We wanted to be able to fund multiple projects, okay?
Troy, if I understand you correct, we can't do the project she's referring to until some tax increment financing dollars come in.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Correct.
She borrowed.
That there may be the possibility of the town either providing some seed money or loaning the DDA money. And one of the things I've talked with Troy and Bill in particular about is trying to have some early successes so that there's some momentum and the DDA can, for lack of better language, put its name on something. So that's something we still have to look at in terms of what might be budgetarily feasible.
So what you're saying is what I indicated is not necessarily correct.
Well,
We have to have money from
you have to
somewhere.
have, whether that money is coming from the increment, which will take a while, or the town is providing a loan to the DDA or some seed money.
But again, let me understand what you said. You're saying the town could loan the DDA money to do a small win
Potentially, yes.
before the tax increment financing is in the account.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
We have to
the
look.
good
at
news is
things
what I
like
said was not correct.
as well, but yeah.
So,
Go ahead.
all of I do need to refresh my brain on the current developments. I need to look at that map and study it. But are there reimbursement agreements that can be made with developments that are already active and in the plan?
That's an interesting question. Being frank and transparent as I often am, I would
Yes.
ask, oh,
Why?
yes, that would be my first question.
I have, it might be my involvement with strategic planning in Winter Park. When I was in that strategic planning place, I was like, oh, well, we're making decisions when decisions have already been made.
Right.
So what my question is if there's already some development that's going to be phased in, and like I said, I have very little to say other than the Riverwalk stuff. I'm not sure, but I don't know how many dollars are being put into those projects, but I'm
Right.
guessing they're pretty big. And there's a lot of things already like in queue. So how can we not already start creating those reimbursement agreements and get a step ahead?
You could, but ultimately, we need to do, I need to do math on what the increment will be. I counsel my clients to request a demonstration of need for the funding. For me, again, that goes back to the kind of the blank check theory that I don't prescribe to. We need to be able to know that those taxpayer dollars are going to what's permissible and allowed under state statute. So demonstration of need will always be important.
Correct. And like to stay high without going like too into the detail. I was just looking at some of the, blight, I've never used the word, but just ingress and regress with childcare that's located in that region, where some of that development's already like projected to be at. And knowing I'm married to a firefighter, I'm like, oh, well, you're, mentioning those things, and they already brought up some concerns that I would have for safety and childcare, ingress, regress, stuff like that, where I was like, oh, that's right in that region. So can we dip into those developments for getting money into the thing sooner?
Public safety is one of the biggest kind of roles that DDAs help play, with everything from, safe infrastructure, lighting. One of my DDAs is exploring, how they add to police protection for certain areas in their downtown corridors. So there's a lot of different ways that you guys can implement that allowable expense of public safety. And so those things that you just mentioned kind of ring that bell for me.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. I don't want to belabor the point, but maybe just to add to a point that Troy had made. When it comes to the policies that you adopt for how to allocate your funds, this idea of the demonstration of need is pretty critical. I don't want to say that it's a state statute that your money must be spent in such a way, but it's very, very common, and I would say a best practice for each applicant to be able to demonstrate need. And the issue with a project that might already be underway is that you could look at that pro forma and say, well, the market condition for whatever reason was such that they felt that the project was viable without the contribution from the DDA. And so there wasn't really a demonstration of need. When you do have applicants come forward and clearly demonstrate that need, or if there's an addendum to that project that furthers some of the goals of the plan of development, again, childcare and or affordable housing, if that is something that could be added to a project that's in practice that has an additional application, I think that might be a different story. But if there's not a clear demonstrable need for the last dollar in to be from you as the DDA, you'd probably not want to leverage your funds in that way.
But what about, and Abby, I thought maybe you might be getting to this, but if you have somebody developing along the Riverwalk and they offer to do improvements to the actual Riverwalk that's part of the public right of way versus part of their project, that is something that we could, if I understand correctly, sign an agreement for, and they could be paid back for that in public improvement through increment as the increment comes in.
Yes.
Accurate. Sure. Okay.
Yes. I love what Hillary Portel says at Englewood DDA. DDAs are meant to enhance projects. Okay. They're not meant to really fundamentally change the project coming in, but they're meant to enhance them. That's a perfect example that Sarah just laid out, where they're enhancing the right of way outside of their developable parcel. That's straight down the line, something you all can invest in.
I want to make sure everybody understands the basics of how tax increment financing works. I know Bill has that graph up there, but we didn't really.
I'm happy to go over it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, just
similar.
clarify, like you brought up parking, right? You get some extra parking, right? Suddenly more people, easy to access, right? We're gonna get some sales tax right away, right? Versus
Yeah.
these big developments that we're waiting,
Right.
on different taxation, right? So
Mhm.
I assume that this takes into account all the different levels of tax and a couple more parking spaces, a couple more people stopping by, at businesses already here, right? That's quicker, maybe at a lower amount to begin with, right? But that's just going to be different levels. But we're
Mhm.
talking all that is taken into account.
I think it can be for the kind of development, but this DDA doesn't get any money from sales tax.
Okay.
The money that the DDA will have to work with for that tax increment,
Yep.
comes from property tax increases with newer redevelopment.
Okay, so everything that we're talking about with the grass and everything is strictly property taxes.
So like if Clayton Court gets developed,
Yep.
all of those properties, we will get, or the DDA will get the increment from those projects. So right now, they're just taxed on land.
Yep.
Once there's a building there, particularly if there's commercial development, that property tax goes to the DDA
Okay.
as the increment.
That's why it's hard to be specific on where this is coming from, even
Yeah.
though it might help in other ways.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so it doesn't mean the DDA couldn't spend money on this, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill or Troy. You could spend money on that, right, if you had the money to spend on it. But in terms of where that increment is coming from, that funds DDA project, it's strictly from property tax.
Okay.
And there's some kind of a reality check possibly is the ballot questions coming up in November regarding the cap on property tax or property value increase, property tax increase of 4 or 5%. So Troy's grinning. You could explain it much better than me.
Well, I'm grinning out of pain and despair, to be honest with you, but because it's how our state works. So we have a particularly low threshold for putting amendments to our Constitution or constitutional provisions on the ballot. And so we have Initiative 50 that will be on the ballot this fall. I'm encouraging all of my clients to write opposition letters or resolutions. This is a cap on property taxes if the projected property taxes are expected to go over 4% statewide on aggregate. So while it's very simple in its wording, which generally lends to a yes vote, it's exceptionally complicated in how it might be implemented. The word projected in the ballot language actually is problematic because most of these efforts in the past have always been at a look back basis or on a retroactive basis. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the state projects it from the Budget Office of Budget this fall. I encourage you all to educate yourselves on this ballot initiative. If it passes, Senate Bill 233, which our legislature passed in the closing hours of this year's session, will not go into effect. Initiative 50 will have has a infinite impact on local government. It does not touch state finances because property taxes fund local government in Colorado. So, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I think it's important to stay positive and hopeful that, there's still great things to be done. But it is an obstacle that our community, but the overall local government community really has to face. So for me, it's something that wasn't even mentioned in the Colorado Municipal League legislative update, which I found very surprising. So the proponents have not taken it off the ballot yet. They still have that right, but all indications are that they will not.
Don't have too much time left. I do want to cover kind of some future agenda items and talk about a regular meeting time. But also don't want to cut off your access to Troy and Bill if there are any remaining
for any questions.
Can we get Troy's email? Is that possible? Can we contact you directly?
Oh, sure. I that doesn't bother me at all. It's T Bernberg. That's BERNBERG at northlandsecurities.com. It's a long domain name. I hate it, but it's northlandsecurities, one word.com.
That would help me a lot. Thanks.
Of course, happy to.
And on that note, I would like to go more into the TIF at the next
Sure.
meeting, just to better understand it, because I did do my research and I was still kind of lost.
I will say over the course of the DDAC committee, my understanding of it continues to evolve, and I think in part there's been legislation for pieces that how it actually works. It continues to evolve, so it's
That discussion would probably be really helpful for us to have a better understanding of when it's triggered, what's the starting point, and that would help us understand when funds would be available.
correct, yeah.
In particular, for new projects where the big dollars could come from.
Yeah, on that note, back here. So in terms of some next steps, and I do want to attempt to establish a regular meeting time today if possible, but I'll circle back to that. We're looking at adopting bylaws, or at least presenting bylaws and starting to work through them at the next meeting. And depending on how everyone feels about them, we can either adopt them or bring them back to a subsequent meeting for adoption if we do larger revisions. Once we have bylaws adopted, those bylaws will establish how we elect officers. Generally speaking, I think there's a chair, a co-chair, a secretary, and a treasurer. Tend to be kind of the standard officers that are allowed for and tend to be utilized. An executive director role, at this stage, there's not necessarily money to hire a fancy paid executive director. So talking about what that looks like, if you do want to rely on town staff to fill that role in the interim until there's a better financial picture, you can see if there might actually be a paid staff person that would make sense. The plan of development, going back and forth with the county assessor. Troy and I jumped on a phone call with her. She's previously worked with urban renewal authorities in Delta County. And the Grand County Assessor's Office actually hired her part-time specifically to work on the tax increment for the DDA. So she would like us, you need a plan of development to be adopted by this body, and then it has to go in front of the planning commission. The planning commission gets 30 days to provide a recommendation to the board of trustees. We also provide it to the school district if they would like to provide any comments. And then the town board of trustees has to adopt it. That has to happen before you can do any other work, spend money on any projects, and before that tick clock can start. Again, like a lot of this, I find it very confusing, the information around exactly how all of this and the timing works. But it sounds like some of the new development that has just gone in that wasn't on the books when the 2023 assessments were done could potentially be increment for the TDA. And so there is that pressure to get this the plan of development adopted as soon as possible, but by no later than the start of December. And it sounds like if the county assessor's office knows that this is the direction we are moving in, that they can give us kind of some baseline information to work out the numbers in August, which includes kind of an initial assessment. Does that all sound accurate, Troy?
Yes.
Okay. So staff is currently working on whether it makes sense to try to just do the plan of development in-house. A lot of towns do work with consulting firms. A lot of times this is a process that's done over a length of time with a lot of community engagement and fancy graphics. The town has currently just kicked off a
town comprehensive plan process. So we're a little leery to try to jump into the full scale kind of glossy plan of development for a lot of money if we can go with a more trimmed down version that will serve the same purposes and have it reference the town comprehensive plan that's coming. The council that we've repeatedly gotten from everyone we've talked to is to keep this document general, as Bill was saying, to focus on overall vision and mission, because this is a document that's meant to serve the life of the DDA for the next 30 years. So if you're super prescriptive and talking about particular beer gardens, we like keep talking about beer gardens, you know, maybe 20 years from now, prohibition will be in effect and we can't have beer gardens and nothing else is provisioned for. So trying to look really big picture, and then we can hammer down the nitty gritty of priorities and kind of yearly 3 or 5 year kind of strategic plans and operating documents and policies and things like that. So we are hoping to start that plan of development process and looking at it ideally at our next meeting and try to have something to the planning commission no later than early September, which will give them time to review it and then to have the board of trustees involved. I think we will have some meetings where we invite stakeholders and people from the public, business owners, residents, and hopefully trustees in the planning commission so that they're all involved in that process and we are not presenting them a document out of left field that they kick back to us and we have to go back and forth a million times and not be able to have that adopted by the end of the year. So that is kind of what we are looking at with that. And then from that, we can delve into more of the operating plans, priority setting, work plans, start to build out a budget. The board of trustees is in their budget process in the fall. So if there's an ask for some money, be it a loan or seed money, it would be good to be doing that in the fall when they're in their budget process and kind of are able to weigh this with other town priorities.
Who was that again? You just mentioned that's doing that budgeting?
The board of trustees
Okay.
for the town of Fraser. And then making sure we establish, or the DDA establishes an IGA with the town of Fraser. Kind of outlining, again, things like staff resources to try to provide some boots on the ground and work. Any sort of financial assistance, having you covered under CERSA and insurance. Other things we can get into the nitty gritty of. I don't know if anybody on the board has experience in graphic design and would want to do like a website or logo, social media, things like that. Otherwise, that's something else that town staff could potentially help with. So kind of hammering out those details.
I think it's a lot to have the economic development, the EDAP, I think you said, or something, the comprehensive plan committee, and then we're another committee, right? How is the cohesivity gonna work with that? I'm just curious.
So it's interesting. I thought in an ideal world, it would be great if we just completed our town comprehensive plan.
Right.
I was talking to a consultant today who could potentially help with the plan of development, and he really felt that they're two separate beasts and that the plan of development can help inform the town comprehensive plan. And again, the idea that this would be built off of that 2017 plan, which obviously some time has passed, but that can serve as a starting point, as well as the different conversations that we had with the DDAC committee and some of the public meetings we had then, and then inviting people in for additional public meetings. I think staff is kind of envisioning in part that the plan of development can reference aligning with, the current town plans once those are adopted,
Mhm.
and we can work language in there.
Is
But
it-
otherwise, if we wait for the town comprehensive plan to take place, we can't do anything.
Right.
Could we get examples?
Yes, and there are
Of-
examples on the website for the DDA, so I can send everybody that link. But There's some different
That's what I was wondering, can we have like this is so lame, but like a booklet of like some of these visuals to reference when we're in these meetings I just feel like I went through all the DDA websites. It's amazing how much information's out there.
Yeah.
And I can keep collecting data, but I feel like to be visually on that same like plane of like going high and then coming low. And I think it just might be useful to have the economic development plan that's already like, it sounds amazing. And then the stuff that occurred in 2017, I think is in there too. And then maybe some of what, I don't know, the comprehensive, what like as that grows? I mean, I don't know, I just feel like it'd be great to have like a one thing to look at where we as we move forward.
Yeah, I can send out the 2017 Fraser strategic plan
Cool.
and then with with DDAC or in front of the board, we did a workshop specifically around plan of development. So I
Okay.
can send that PowerPoint and
That'd be
that's gonna
great.
highlight some snippets. Because
Awesome.
again, otherwise I think the best resource right now really is that webpage, but I
Yeah.
know it's a lot to go through.
Yeah, I mean, I'd geek out and print out my own, it's fine. But whatever I can get to just consolidate
Yeah. of
and
course.
get like on the, stay on the same page of all the work you've already done. Because I feel like there's no reason to redo anything and reinvent the wheel in a lot of areas
Right.
and stay focused with what we're supposed to do.
We didn't want to overwhelm you with so many documents this first meeting. But
Yeah.
It'd be feasible to actually like go through them, but as we're starting to talk about the plan of development, maybe those are the important.
And I'm guessing, is it appropriate that if individuals really want a hard copy of specific documents that we could ask for that? Okay.
Yep.
And then I was also gonna ask, can we get, I think they referenced a ton of other places like Inglewood. And I couldn't keep up, but can we look at their bylaws and like try not to reinvent, but work with
Yeah,
what's.
so we've gotten some different templates of bylaws, from Bill as well as from Dalton and Butler and Stone that we've been working with on the legal side. And I'm happy to share those. In talking with Dalton, what he said seemed to generally work best is they've created a lot of those, that they give us a template with areas where, you can decide how often you want to meet and, kind of the areas for you to fill in. So what I can do is I can send out those sample bylaws so you have those additional templates. But if it works for everybody, the next meeting, we can bring a template with areas for you to fill in and kind of go from there. So you're not trying to pull from too many places.
So now here initially, are we looking at every 2 weeks till we get some of these details ironed out?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting, initially, given the timeline for trying to get the plan of development in place, I think we will need some special meetings beyond a regular meeting time. After that, I mean, I would probably recommend that it's a minimum once a quarter, but planned monthly meetings, and then if there's nothing to talk about that month, that meeting could be full. So again, the bylaws can, I believe, kind of dictate how special meetings are called and how meetings are canceled, if there just is nothing to talk about, at some point, but I would envision, and again, this is for you all to decide, that generally it would be monthly, but initially we might have some extra special meetings in either July or August as we're trying to figure out that plan of development.
Yeah.
Would it be smart to send you, like, if we have schedules already in place for those months, to already just send you the dates that we are not?
Yeah, so I sent out the doodle poll, and I don't know the best way to go about this, because just with this many people, it's really hard.
Yes.
I'm tempted to say you all managed to be here, maybe we keep going with this time, but I know this time is not ideal for Greg, and Steve said Tuesdays were not ideal for him. Based on the doodle poll, the time that seems to work best for the most people, but that was 6 people, was Tuesdays from 10 to 12. And I try to mix of morning times and evening times. And
Yeah.
so I don't know if we want to try to do a show of hands. I mean, Tuesdays 10 to 12.
I don't think I
That's
filled that
better.
one out, but I'll send it in.
Yeah, it's Tuesdays, 10 to 12, yeah, works for me.
But not some head shakes. I know it was kind of confusing with the poll because it was for a specific week, but I really was trying to just gauge generally for days and times.
And it was pretty clear from what I looked at that Tuesdays were the one day that really worked for people. I'm sorry, it doesn't work for you, Greg.
It's not great for me
Greg, I
either.
think the earlier in the day would be better, but based on the poll, the earlier in the day was better for other folks. I think Greg's conflict is through, if I can share his news, Greg's conflict is through August.
Okay.
I know he's open on November, Tuesday afternoons, but, Can we do evenings? Those didn't seem to be better on the poll for
Yeah,
people.
anybody with a restaurant evenings are challenging.
For children.
Tuesdays aren't great for me, but I'll try and make it happen, but I almost always like, as soon as I walk out the door, I have to go to Denver.
My
I
husband will
usually have
never
to
be
go
able
to Denver early in the week. But
Yeah, you said Tuesdays are good for you either.
I can do the Tuesdays during the day, 2 to 12,
Better
but
for you?
what's
my
that?
husband will never be home at 5.
If it's on a Tuesday, the earlier the better for me.
10 to 12, would that be better?
That would be better than it for me.
Tuesday at work.
So
Good for
can I
me.
see, and I realize a couple
Earlier.
people popped off, can I see a show of hands for Tuesday, 10 to 12, if that's something to wait for?
You know, I'll make it
Okay.
work.
Okay.
Barry put up 2 hands.
Thanks, Barry.
It's hard because
And then that works
Yeah.
even through like,
almost always,
Is it better if it's earlier, if we do?
it's better for
9?
me if it's
I mean,
early.
I love earlier, my brain works better.
Like 6
But
a.m.
DDAC was.
Want to do 11?
Yeah.
Oh.
How about a 9 to 11?
11?
That's easier for me.
I mean, I like it.
It's worse for me, but I'm
Yeah.
one person.
Okay.
Still matters.
Right, but there's 2 of you. so-
You have a workout on Tuesday
Yeah, sure.
mornings?
I work out every morning, but I just have a reoccurring meeting every Tuesday from 9 to 10.
Yeah,
Ah,
I also have
okay.
a recurring meeting every week from 9 to 10.
Okay, let's stick
Okay.
with 10.
Yeah.
Sorry, Barry.
All right.
Yeah.
I will do 10 to 12
Transporter.
to do Steve and Greg, and I know they were the 2 that Tuesdays were up with. But for now, we will shoot for that. And if we look at the 3rd week in July for our next meeting, I know.
Given the time pressures, do you want to do 2 in July?
Yeah. Feel like there's a lot to be done.
Yes, we could look at the 2nd week of July. I know the initial doodle poll. There was not much availability that week.
I mean,
For the first or the second week?
Are you talking about the 9th?
Correct.
I can be available though.
You can be available, okay,
And not be available.
not,
Yeah, I'm gone second week too.
Yeah.
Right.
You're gone, you say?
Yeah, but there is, what is it? There's 5 weeks or there's 5 Tuesdays in July.
that's true. If we look at July 16th and then July 30th.
16th, I'd be remote, but that's okay.
Okay,
What
Same,
time
I'll
do
be
you
in the
told
car.
you? They're trying to do that.
3rd is fine. No, I think that's fine, right? Let's call in. or something.
Peggy Smith.
yeah, I mean, it's never
Not
ideal,
ideal. I know.
especially with connectivity issues, but I think we have to do the best we can
Yeah.
with,
Did we throw out a date just now?
yeah, so let's
16th.
start with July 16th from 10 to 12. Yeah,
15th is a Monday. You say
Tuesday.
July 16th is a Tuesday.
Oh, 16, okay. 10 to 12.
Just a show of hands as since I know that Tuesdays aren't great for Steve and Greg who aren't here, are Monday mornings any better?
Doable.
Monday mornings work for people?
Mondays are doable for me.
Anybody not do Monday?
I can do after 9, but before that, I have to drop off my kids.
Okay.
I mean, I like Mondays, just get it done. How I feel.
I usually work 10 or 5 a.m. to noon
Okay.
Mondays.
That
Hard meeting.
changes a little.
Possibly.
Put you on the spot. Okay.
We'll see who. There's other employees available.
Okay. So you would prefer Tuesday?
Yeah, Tuesday's
Okay.
open.
Let me check in with Greg and,
would love to
Ethan
know, yeah.
on the Monday versus Tuesday question, and we'll go with the majority. I think that's the best we can do,
Okay,
if that works for everybody.
thank you for trying to make that happen.
Yeah.
Not easy.
Not the fun part. All right, anything else? Well, and hopefully we'll be moving into some more fun stuff.
Okay.
Would somebody like to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Love
Oh.
it.
Aye. All right, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We need to turn these in.